Good afternoon, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I am JEONG, Vice Minister for Strategy and Intelligence at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is my privilege and honor to serve as a moderator for today's session, focusing on the theme of inter-regional cooperation for peace and security amidst geopolitical uncertainties. For today's discussion, we are honored to have our 4 senior diplomats from key countries. Let me take a moment to introduce them. Joining us today are His Excellency Levent GÜMRÜKÇÜ, Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Turkey. Her Excellency Dana PURCARESCU, Ambassador for Indo-Pacific of the French Foreign Ministry. His Excellency Philippe LAFORTUNE, Canadian Ambassador to Korea. And finally, His Excellency Colin, CROOKS, British Ambassador to Korea. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to travel all the way to Jeju Island. The international order that has been upheld for the past 8 decades is being tested as never before by an array of unprecedented challenges. Nationalism and protectionism are rising, and geopolitical tensions are deepening. We are also witnessing growing fragmentation within the West, the spread of unilateralism among major powers, and the decline of multilateralism. These trends pose an unprecedented challenge to the international community's ability to respond effectively to global challenges and provide essential global public goods. Against this backdrop, strategic dialogue and cooperation between Europe and the Indo-Pacific or Asia-Pacific have never been more important. The deepening military cooperation between Russia and North Korea, catalyzed by the war in Ukraine, has underscored the growing interlinkages between European and Indo-Pacific security. Likewise, development in the Middle East continue to affect both regions through their impact on energy markets, food security, defense industries, supply chains, and even the deployment of military assets. With our regions facing an increasing number of interconnected challenges, it is essential that we expand our cooperation in addressing shared concerns for peace and prosperity in both regions. This is why today's session is both timely and highly relevant. Today's title is Inter-Regional Cooperation for Peace and Security Amidst Geopolitical Uncertainties. Without further ado, we will first hear brief opening statements from each panelist who will share their perspective on the challenges facing their countries and their approaches to addressing them. Following these presentations, I will ask questions to the panel, after which we will open the floor to the audience. I would encourage all audience to actively engage during our Q&A session later. It is my pleasure to invite our first speaker, Deputy Foreign Minister GÜMRÜKÇÜ, to share his thoughts. Please.
Thank you. Should I use that? Yeah, great. Thank you, Mr. Vice Minister. Thank you for inviting me to the forum. It's a great pleasure to be in Jeju, although it took me 18 hours to come to Jeju from Ankara, and I'm coming directly from the airport to this panel. So my brain and my body are in different time zones, so excuse me if I make some mishaps during the panel. But I cannot agree more with you in terms of the international security environment, first and foremost, really. I mean, the world is changing quite fast, and unfortunately, it has become a much less safe place, more volatile and more dangerous. Particularly looking from where we are situated in Turkey, unfortunately, our immediate vicinity are full of conflicts, unfortunately. We have an actual war in Europe, which has now entered into its 5th year in Ukraine. In the Middle East, of course, it has never been more volatile, if I may say so. It has been a volatile region all around, but it has never been that volatile, I can say that. With a war in Iran, genocide in Gaza, invasion in Lebanon, and this and that, so it is quite grim there, of course. But beyond that, I think there is growing radicalism and terrorism and violent extremism all around the globe in that regard. But more importantly, in my mind, is use of force or threatening to use of force to achieve political objectives, unfortunately, is now becoming the first rather than the last resort in international relations. And I'm not even talking about climate change, the widening digital gap between the developed and the developing world, which are, in fact, maybe more consequential than any other thing. But again, I think the worst part of this conundrum that is before us is that the international institutions that we have built over the last 8 decades to maintain peace and security are unfortunately becoming increasingly ineffective. And they are ineffective to deliver their goals and, the promise. And as we see it, it unfortunately leads to a loss of faith in international diplomacy and in multilateralism. And unfortunately, the immediate reflex on the part of many countries when faced with such a grim picture is to turn inward, to become more transactional or to become more protectionist. But unfortunately, this is exactly what we must not do. Because historically speaking, transactionalism, protectionism, or crude nationalism, as we see it, has never produced anything good, either for those countries who pursued that or for the rest of humanity. So I think, we need to change the course of history. We need to stop that backslide. But the problem, of course, here, who is going to step up to do that? Of course, the theoretical easy answer in my mind is, those who have a stake in a rules-based international order and who has the ability to contribute to that goal, to work in that direction. And when you look at the interest section for that, it is certainly, I think, more the small and the middle powers who has a stake in the continuation of the rules-based international order. Because unlike the great powers, which can somehow get away with a world without rules and principles because of their sheer power and influence, the middle and small powers do need, predictability, do need free trade, universal norms, and a system that can support that in order to survive in such a world. But when you look at the abilities part of it, then of course, I think the middle powers are more well-placed than anyone else to, contribute to this goal. And I'm not only talking about their military and economic powers, which are not negligible. When you look at many middle powers, some of which are, of course, here on this panel as well. They are really quite, powerful in terms of military and their economic influence. But more so, I am more interested in their ability to foster dialogue, to maintain channels of communication with all the parties in the world, with all the countries in the world, and thus to build bridges across geopolitical divides. So that is what makes the middle powers, I think, more important. And I think, of course, their deep and insightful understanding of their regions, their diplomatic flexibility and credibility, in a way make them quite, I should say, ideal actors to provide space for creative solutions and to advocate for a more inclusive and representative international system, or also to mediate conflicts and to prevent conflicts for that matter. But I think to do so, middle powers should be able to work in tandem with each other. Alone, their abilities and their influence is somewhat restricted and limited. But if they come together, I think they amplify their voices. I would just give you an example, of course, you know better than anyone else, the MIKTA, for example. Like 15 years ago or so, we came up with this grouping exactly with that idea, in order to be able to amplify our voices by coming together as middle powers. For the last 15 years, though, it remained more sort of as a consultative body, on soft issues mostly. But I think given the challenges that we are faced with, I think we need MIKTA to be more operational, to be more effective. But I think we need more MIKTA type sort of platforms which brings together middle powers for them to exchange ideas, for them to explore opportunities for joint action and so. So this is where we stand. As Turkey. Of course, we are quite active in our own region individually as well. In whichever direction you look, either the Ukraine or the war in Iran or the situation in Syria or whatnot, of course, we try to do our best. We try to bring our added value to the table, but I think we can do much more in cooperation with other middle powers which are like-minded with us, which need a rules-based international order in the future for us to survive and flourish. So let me stop here maybe as a means of introduction. Maybe I already spoken too long, but let me stop here.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister GÜMRÜKÇÜ, for your insightful remarks. I could refer so many good words you just mentioned: dialogue, building bridge, flexibility, credibility, and creative solution. MIKTA. Thank you for your contribution. Now I would like to give the floor to Ambassador PURCARESCU.
Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to share the panel with such stellar colleagues. Minister, I'd like to start by reminding everyone here that France is a European power, but also an Indo-Pacific power. We are home in the Indo-Pacific. We have citizens and territories, which means that whatever is happening around the world, we are affected directly by it. So for us, it's not a matter of asking if there is interconnectedness between the Euro-Atlantic area and the Indo-Pacific. We know there is, because we are right in the middle of it. And my first point about that is we have currently open wars, which is something that when we founded the UN, we're hoping to bring to an end, and Korea is an example of what we all tried to bring about. But unfortunately, we have open wars in the Middle East, in Ukraine. But there's more at play than that, because sometimes, the open crisis is catching all the energy and the interest. But in the meantime, let's not forget that the Indo-Pacific area, we have territorial and maritime disputes, like several places. We have disregard for the law of the sea, which is permanently there and undermining our capacity to work together. We have growing nuclear arsenals. That's also something that it's a quiet threat, but it's a mounting threat for stability. And beyond security issues, we also have, everything is intertwined with economy. The wars have shown how fast our economies are reacting to what's happening on the ground. So if you add to that all the hybrid threats, and you're in your position, it's something that must keep you awake at night. Now we use more and more coercion as a way of relating to each other, which is something that, frankly, we had hoped we had overcome that moment in our history. So everything is there. All these challenges are there. At the same time, in the Indo-Pacific, we lack a regional security architecture. We have forums to discuss. We have regional organizations, and we should keep building their capabilities and strengths, but we don't have something overarching to put everything on the table, which means that the only way to do it is for every one of us to keep these subjects on the agenda, on the item permanently. And for us, as France, again, this is home to us, so we are looking at it from a solution-oriented point of view. And we came up with this idea that the only way forward is a non-confrontational partnership. It's something where my president is calling the coalition of the independent states, where we work together to strengthen every one of us our sovereignty, because if our sovereignty is assured and stabilized, then we can be better partners. We can engage more openly and in a more transparent manner with the partners. And I think this is not it is actually trying to avoid to be part of a bloc. It's avoiding to be part of a mentality of spheres of influence. When we act as sovereign states, based on our interest, of course, let's not be naive about it. We act about our interest, but we have the choice. As independent sovereign states, we need to maintain the choice to be able to work today with one partner, tomorrow with another. On one subject, we have a group of countries that are ready to go ahead faster, that have more time or more interest or more resources to put into the subject. But what is important is to maintain our capacity to autonomously assess the situations, which means we need to know what's happening. And I'm very impressed by the title of your job, because I think it encompasses the two things that we need. We need to know, and we need to prepare in advance for it. So anticipation is very, very, very important. So that's the basis for what we need to know and understand autonomously what's happening around us. And secondly, we need to maintain our freedom of action. We need to be able not to be coerced into choosing one position or not doing something. We need to maintain capabilities, and we need to maintain also, I would say, the willingness to act in order to change the world when we are not happy with the results. So I will stop it here in order to listen to my colleagues, and happy to take the questions.
Thank you, Ambassador PURCARESCU, for your very thoughtful and insightful perspectives. I have many questions, and maybe the audience will ask some questions as well. We have a next round of discussion on following up on your points. Let us now turn to Ambassador LaFortune for his insights. Please.
Nida, merci beaucoup. Good afternoon to all colleagues. Before I start my remarks, I just want to make 2 points a little bit outside of the subject of the panel. The first one is Canada, the United States, and Mexico are currently proud hosts of the FIFA World Cup. And so I know a lot of nations are currently participating in the FIFA World Cup, so I want to wish the best of luck to all of your nation. I didn't see today's latest results. We lost. But there's a strong possibility that Canada plays South Korea in the next game. So I will formally apologize, but I will be out of my diplomatic reserve during that game, as I will be cheering for Canada. On the more sad note, though, I also would like to send my prayers and my thoughts to the people of Venezuela, as an important earthquake struck Venezuela in the last hours of today. Reports are still fluid. Hopefully, there will not be too much casualties as well. But a country that has been pledged with many challenges in the past years as well. Thoughts and prayers go with the people of Venezuela, and hopefully safe recovery to those communities and those societies. The last thing I just want to mention, going to my remark, is as the Canadian ambassador, I thought that would be original a little bit, as I wanted to make reference to echoing a diagnostic that recently articulated by our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Mark Carney, at Davos. But I fully recognize that I will not be today the first person that makes reference to Prime Minister Carney. But he noted that we're not witnessing a gradual evolution of the international system, but rather a rupture, a shift toward a world characterized by intensifying geopolitical rivalry and fewer constraints on the exercise of power. In his words, we're entering a harsh reality where geopolitics is submitted to no limits, to no constraints. At the same time, he underscored a crucial point, a point that actually the Deputy Minister has also underlined, that middle powers are not without agency. By acting together, grounding our action in both values and interests, we retain the capacity to shape a more stable and resilient international order. And it is from that perspective that I would like to share a few reflections with all of you today. the assumptions that underpin the post-Cold War era, that economic integration would naturally lead to stability and that rule would constrain behavior, are no longer in the same way. Today's interdependency is increasingly viewed through a strategic lens. Supply chains can be leveraged. Financial system can be used as tools of influence. Technological access can be restricted. This is not a temporary disruption, it's a structural shift. And as the Prime Minister also reminded us, we must resist the temptation to simply go along to get along, hoping that accommodation will ensure stability, because it will not. Second, resilience in this environment cannot be built in isolation. Across the globe, countries are seeking greater sovereignty in energy, in defense, in critical mineral, and in advanced technologies. This is a rational response, but if pursued individually, it risks leading to a fragmented and less efficient global system. The alternative is collective resiliency. Canada's Foreign Minister Anand emphasized in Ottawa earlier this year that security today extends well beyond traditional defense. It encompasses economic strength, industrial capacity, and technological leadership. These are not assets that any single country can fully develop alone. This is where inter-regional cooperation becomes essential. Between Canada and the Republic of Korea, we see strong complementaries. Korea's leadership in advanced manufacturing and digital technologies, Canada's strength in energy, critical mineral, and innovation ecosystems. Together and with other like-minded partners, we can reduce vulnerabilities while maintaining openness. This includes strengthening trusted supply chains in critical sectors, deepening defense industrial cooperation with a focus on capability and ecosystem, advancing partnership in emerging technologies such as AI and quantum, and reinforcing energy security through reliable and diversified sources. Third, cooperation must be pragmatic, it must be flexible, and results-driven. In today's environment, we cannot rely solely on large, universal framework to deliver outcomes. The reality is not all partners will align on all issues. What is emerging instead is a more flexible model, one that Canada has described as variable geometry. Different coalitions coming together on specific issues based on shared interests and capability, a concept that both the previous speakers actually made reference to. This approach allows for progress where it's possible without requiring consensus everywhere. Enable countries to act more rapidly, focus on tangible deliverables, and build a dense web of cooperation that reinforce resiliency over time. For middle power, this matters deeply because when we act alone, our leverage is limited, but when we act together across region, we can shape outcomes in a meaningful ways. In conclusion, we're operating in a more complex, more contested, and more uncertain world. In such an environment, the instinct to retreat, to edge, or to wait is understandable, but it is not sufficient. Countries like ours, Canada, the Republic of Korea, and others represented here, have both the capacity and actually the responsibility to act. Not by attempting to recreate the past, but by building something adapt to present realities. This means being honest about the challenges we face, investing in our resiliency, and working together to ensure that cooperation, not fragmentation, defines the next phases of the international system. In an area defined by geopolitical uncertainty, inter-regional cooperation must serve as the connective tissue of the international system, binding our efforts, reinforcing our resiliency, and enabling us together to advance peace and security amongst geopolitical uncertainty. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Ambassador LaFortune, for highlighting those critical points. You know, you pointed out that we should resist temptation to go along, and you mentioned about collective resilience and inter-regional cooperation, not fragmentation. And thank you for mentioning of Korean-Canada bilateral relations. So I have a couple of questions after this session. So now, finally, Ambassador CROOKS, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister. Thank you for the invitation to the Jeju Forum. I know it's being driven very aggressively this year. It seems to be bigger and more relevant than ever. And congratulations on getting all of the Secretary General candidates on the stage earlier this afternoon as well. One thing that's coming through very, very clearly from that discussion from others here today is that the world order is under severe stress. I'm not going to recount now some of the many reasons that would be. But I would argue also that, in fact, amid all this stress, the core values and the core interests of a great many countries in the world remain the same. Some have used the term middle powers. I liked the phrase that was used in the rubric for this session, capable countries. I would think of globally capable countries as perhaps a way of thinking about ourselves. But whether globally capable or simply globally impacted, many countries share the same interests in having the ingredients for a well-run, stable world order in which countries can prosper. And these are not groundbreaking. These are things I think we all believe in: democracy, human rights, the rule of law, stable economic policy, free markets, a rules-based trading system. But the means to achieve these core ingredients, of course, are shifting. We may well mourn the passing of an old order, but it's also, I think, true that the old order has been unable to achieve all of what it's intended to achieve. The old order has not prevented Russia from illegally invading Ukraine, has not prevented the brutal suppression of populations by their own governments in places like Iran and Myanmar, has not prevented misinformation or cyber crime, hasn't prevented the hoarding of some resources like vaccines and critical minerals, or indeed the oversupply of others, such as steel, hasn't prevented the blockage of crucial sea lanes. So there's a clear need for new ways of operating. And many in the world, of course, will criticize the Trump administration, and there's no doubt that the style and indeed the substance of what's been coming out of Washington over the last year and a half has shocked many, including in Europe and in other countries. I would say that for countries like Korea, like the UK, for whom the US alliance remains the bedrock of our security, we have to think in a positive way. And I think that many of us can really learn a lot from the way Korea has approached some of the challenges. When some in Europe have been going through the various stages of grieving, in Korea, Korea's got on with a very pragmatic approach to the US alliance, looking to use transactional approaches to get what Korea wants, to make deals. And I think we can learn a lot from that approach. And overall, I would say that the impact of the Trump administration so far has been to accelerate thinking and acting in a new framework for the global order. Many countries now thinking about greater burden sharing in their defense, rebuilding their industrial bases. I think we should treat these pressures as an opportunity. And I would say that the new order that is emerging is not based on a flight from collaboration. It is based on a very evident need for deeper collaboration between countries. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing an intensification of this sort of collaboration beyond regional structures, beyond more traditional structures, more traditional groupings. We're seeing an acceleration in thinking over how we collectively and individually can uphold our interests in a world where the institutions which were meant to be doing so are now struggling to function. So I think this challenge for us is both to strengthen the institutions as well as to build new structures and new relationships of trust. For the United Kingdom, the focus on the Indo-Pacific, I would say, is natural, and it is also permanent. We have been saying for a long time that Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific security are interdependent, are indivisible. Russia's collusion with North Korea is the clearest evidence of this indivisibility, with Russia blatantly undermining security and changing the balance of security here in the Korean Peninsula, North Korea sustaining Russia's illegal and cruel war effort in Ukraine. And these make some of the existing structures even more important. The UK, Canada, other countries who have a role in the United Nations Command, more important than ever. Korea's assistance in Ukraine, extremely welcome. Korea's participation along with the other members of the IP4 in NATO summits, extremely welcome as well. But the links between Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific security, I would say, go beyond this one unfortunate example of Russia-North Korea collusion. The Straits of Hormuz situation over the last 3 months, the squeeze on global energy, patently a shared interest between Europe, countries in North America, countries in the Indo-Pacific. And we greatly welcome Korea's support for the UK French-led efforts to collectively protect the freedom of navigation and energy flows through the Straits of Hormuz. Increasingly, I think we're seeing that economic security and national security are deeply linked. We all need resilient supply chains. We need to reduce vulnerabilities in critical sectors. And the Indo-Pacific region, of course, is central to the future of global growth, to technological development, to climate outcomes, of course, and to security. Let me just say a couple of words on technology and AI in particular, because this is now central to peace and security. AI can strengthen resilience, improve public services, accelerate scientific discovery, and help countries respond faster to crises. But it can also amplify cyber threats, disinformation, coercion, and strategic instability if developed or deployed irresponsibly. This is why the UK's approach has been to treat AI not only as an economic opportunity, but also as a security and governance challenge requiring trusted international cooperation. And UK ROK cooperation has been part of that. We co-hosted the AI Seoul Summit a couple of years ago, the Seoul Declaration, and the global group of AI safety and security institutes are ways in which like-minded partners are building a shared scientific understanding of frontier AI risks, common approaches to testing and evaluation, and practical cooperation on secure, trustworthy AI. And in a more contested geopolitical environment, this matters because the countries that shape the rules, standards, and safeguards for critical technologies will also shape the conditions for stability, prosperity, and peace. And this is very much the logic and the spirit of our own Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper's proposed geoeconomics contact group, which she floated in an article in The Economist a couple of months ago. Her proposal, and this is one building block for what new trusted relationships might look like, proposals for a small coalition of trusted partners, including the UK, Korea, Japan, Australia, Canada, focused on practical cooperation in areas such as supply chain resilience, critical technologies, economic governance, shared geoeconomic challenges, with the aim of developing solutions in that grouping that can then be scaled up through wider international and multilateral institutions. It's also why I can come back closer to my own role here on the Korean Peninsula. It's why I would see the UK-Korea bilateral relationship as perhaps a microcosm of what we're trying to build more globally. The UK and Korea have a global strategic partnership. We see this as a key building block of our approach. And Korea is one of our most important partners in the region as a leading technological power, a huge manufacturer, a source of innovation, a glowing global actor, and of course a net provider of global security. Shared growth is at the heart of our partnership. We see the use of complementary strengths as the way to achieve global impact. We want to combine UK strengths in finance, services and research with Korea's prowess in engineering, its scale in manufacturing, its ability to commercialize ideas to help to set a global agenda. And as it happens, the UK and Korea are unusually well positioned to shape the international agenda over the next 2 years through our back-to-back G20 presidencies, the UK in 2027 and Korea in 2028. And this provides a rare opportunity to demonstrate practical leadership on economic security, supply chains, energy resilience, AI governance and growth, while reinforcing a rules-based international system at a time of growing geopolitical uncertainty. So I hope it's an example of two globally capable countries in a world which needs all of our capabilities to work together more than ever. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Ambassador CROOKS, for sharing your valuable and perspective and thoughts. Deeper cooperation are needed beyond a regional and traditional structure. It's a very powerful message. Thank you all. Thank you to all our panelists for your thoughtful, insightful remarks. Listening to your perspectives, I'm struck by how closely your national approaches align with Korea's own priorities. As President Lee mentioned in his welcoming speech this morning, Korea also recognized the need for a more agile and multi-layered network of multilateral cooperation capable of responding to emerging challenges while filling the gaps in global leadership. Korea, too, will continue to build partnership with like-minded and capable countries in pursuit of sharing interests while also contributing to international stability. As we strengthen and modernize Korea's alliance relationship with the US, it is equally important and imperative that we enhance self-strengthening and expand partnership with willing and capable countries like you. Together with the efforts to build up our own capabilities, these endeavors will reinforce the ROK-US alliance, strengthening resilience, adaptability, and readiness in a rapidly evolving strategic environment. Our strong commitment to advancing Europe, Indo-Pacific cooperation and partnership with the countries on this panel is also a key part of this endeavor. Now, I would like to ask a few questions to each of our distinguished panelists. To Deputy Minister GÜMRÜKÇÜ first. Turkey occupies a unique strategic position at the crossroads of Europe, the Middle East, and the Black Sea, while also being part of NATO. Building on this position, Turkey has played an active diplomatic role in regional affairs and has consistently demonstrated its value as an effective mediator. Through its engagement with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, and its extensive diplomatic network across Africa, Central Asia, Turkey also maintains strong ties with the Global South. My question, from Turkey's strategic perspective, what is your assessment of the current trend of growing security interconnectedness between the Indo-Pacific and Europe? As a senior diplomat and expert in regional security yourself, and what new models of cooperation do you believe the middle power countries in both regions can explore to foster de-escalation and regional stability? If you have time, what role can Turkey play in fostering and facilitating regional stability in both regions? Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words about Turkey's role in its own region and beyond as well. You asked me about our assessment about interconnectedness between Euro-Atlantic region and the Indo-Pacific. I mean, it's not even a subjective assessment for us. It's a fact. It's not deniable at all. Because, and I think it's in fact, in some degrees, valid for all the regions in the world today. Because today, security is truly indivisible in the world. Because what happens in any part of the world today has repercussions on all the rest of the globe as well. And that is first and foremost, I think supply chains today are more interconnected than ever. When there is any disruption in any of the choke points in the whole world, I think every country feels its consequences. Whether it is a choke point in terms of maritime security or a conflict in an energy producer country, either it's hydrocarbon resources or critical minerals, or a conflict in a sort of a food rich part of the world as well. So, this is really something that, in today's world, the modern relations are no longer, defined by rigid block polarization, but they are defined by complex and interwoven interdependencies, I would say. And in fact, Ambassador CROOKS has mentioned so many different conflicts, which tells us about that. The war in Ukraine, for example, in the very first weeks and months of this conflict, for example, we have realized how much the whole world is dependent on Ukraine and Russia in terms of grain and fertilizers. And that's why, for example, Turkey took the lead at that time, working together with the United Nations and brokered a deal which was called the Black Sea Grains Deal, which in a way averted a global food crisis at that time. Or the very more recent example is the war in Iran and the situation after the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, for example. It's not even only, again, the energy resources coming out of countries like UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, but even the fertilizers and some of the food products, which are in dire need in Africa, for example. And unfortunately, this 3-month war immediately had an impact on food prices, energy prices, which of course led to a very high inflation in many different parts of the world. So today, definitely, there is no way that any country can avoid the consequences of conflicts in any part of the world itself. But in addition to that, regional conflicts having global implications, I also believe that there are some truly global challenges which are common to all of us. There are certain risks, threats, and challenges which face us all, and none of us can avoid that, can be immune to that. Like, for example, cyber threats, like disruptive technologies. Of course, AI is a big revolution. I think it's going to be so much beneficial for the entire humanity, but only if it remains in the responsible hands, if only it is used responsibly. In the wrong hands, AI can be quite disruptive, for example. Or the information wars, the very hostile propaganda wars that are still going on either in social media or through other means, or terrorism, or violent extremism, or hybrid warfare. Our need to protect critical infrastructure is becoming increasingly tested nowadays through some hybrid warfare techniques, for that matter, or climate change and disaster relief, or pandemics, or nuclear proliferation. These are the kind of threats that are facing us all, and no one can be immune to that. So I think the logical lesson to be drawn from such an international environment is that we need to be more inclusive. We need to be more cooperative with each other. We need to, engage with other in order to learn from our experiences, in order to explore the opportunities for more cooperation. Because there is no longer my region, your region, their region. There is just one world which we all live in and which we are all affected by any development in this world. So that's why I think the title of this panel, Interregional Cooperation for Peace and Security Amidst Geopolitical Uncertainties, is the way to go in the future in this very, world of uncertainties. In Turkey, for example, we used to focus on our immediate vicinity for a long period of time, and we had so much on our plate. As I told you, there are so many uncertainties and conflicts around us per se. But the moment then we realize that, I mean, this whole world is more interconnected and we cannot just, deal with those or tackle those challenges alone in our region, but we need to reach out to other players, like-minded countries in other parts of the world, then, of course, we reached out to Asia. I mean, some 15 or 20 years ago, we started an outreach policy to East Asia in particular, but this outreach policy has now become a strategic pillar of our foreign policy, both in terms of our bilateral relations with the countries in the region, like Korea, for example. It's a prime example. It's a unique example as to, I mean, how much we have come along over the last 20 years or so in diversifying and deepening our relations and cooperation in many fields, from energy to technology, from health to defense industry for that matter. But also we're trying to be present and we're trying to learn and contribute to many of the regional organizations in this part of the world as well. So this is something that we are going to continue in the future. We're going to see and we're going to explore any opportunity for cooperation, and we're going to capitalize on that. But also, you asked me about how, for example, Türkiye can also contribute from its own end to this, Euro-Atlantic, Indo-Pacific cooperation. Definitely, NATO's cooperation with these Indo-Pacific countries, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. Turkey has always been one of the ardent supporters of this cooperation because of the fact that NATO countries and these 4 countries are faced with the same challenges, are quite like-minded, have some very precious, valuable experience and best practices to contribute to each other's own sort of capacity building processes. So this is something that we have been quite supportive, and we will continue to be very much advocate of this relationship. But as it has been so far, this is a relationship quite transparent, quite inclusive. This is to reduce the risks that are facing us all rather than creating new divisions. It's not against any third country or party. It is just to bring us together in the face of common challenges. So this is something that we will continue from our own end as a NATO member, continue to support. Another thing, for example, of course, as I spoke about, mentioned the supply chains being more interconnected. I think we need new corridors, new supply corridors between, Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific, and Euro-Atlantic region. And of course, that brings to my mind the importance of the middle corridor, which goes through Turkey. The Europe and Asia can be indeed more interconnected with each other through this middle corridor going through Turkey and Central Asia and all the way to, the East Asia. So these are the kind of things that we want to work together with our partners in the region so as to be able to make our cooperation much more easier and much more productive for all of us.
Thank you, Minister, for your thoughtful observation and answers. As an ambassador there, until recently, I was amazed of Turkish government's constructive role in those many disputes and war in Ukraine and even the situation in the Middle East. So you mentioned about the more inclusive, more cooperation under this, interconnected world. So thank you for your observation and insight. Now let me turn to Ambassador PURCARESCU. France has long championed the concept of strategic autonomy and has consistently advocated for a stronger Europe. It was also among the first European countries to articulate a comprehensive Indo-Pacific strategy. More recently, France has emphasized the cooperation among capable and independent states, including through ideas such as coalition of independence. My first question is, how do you envision strategic autonomy expanding into deeper cooperation with middle powers in the Indo-Pacific regions? And second question is, what role can frameworks such as a coalition of independence play in addressing today's increasingly complex international challenges? Please.
Well, thank you very much for your questions. Well, what is this coalition of independence about, and what is this sovereignty partnership about? It's about reducing the risk of dependency. This is what we want all, and again, like resilience, like reducing dependency, you can't be doing it alone. What we want is to make sure that we can guarantee the capacity to exercise sovereign choices for all. Like by exercising our own choices is not preventing the others from being able to defend their interest and the well-being of their citizens. So this means, and the minister mentioned it, it means a positive agenda. It's very important to say that this is not against something or because we don't like something. It's because we put forward our ambition to do things together in a positive manner in order for everyone to benefit from the situation. So once we say this, because, and I think it was your minister who said this morning that fragmentation is not a destiny, we have to actively engage. And how do we do that concretely? Because again, one of the Secretary General candidates was mentioning that everybody agrees on diagnosis, and then everybody's tired when we have to discuss about solutions. So how do you do that concretely? Well, I believe that capable and willing countries that want to engage and feel responsible, and I think the word responsible for the well-being of everyone, for stability and prosperity, we have to work step by step. And I think one starting point is mutually beneficial security and defense capabilities. Mutually beneficial. It's not offensive weapons, although we have to be able to signal strategically, but it's mutually beneficial. This also means that we need enhanced interoperability. Why? Because this is sending a solidarity message. If we are interoperable, it's because we want to work together. It's because we want to come and support our partners when they need it. And I think this is the responsible way to be an active power on the international arena. I think it's also important to contribute actively to regional security efforts. Whenever somebody is trying to do something, we all need to come in support of that and to contribute as much as possible. And in order to be credible, there we have to increase our dialogue between the militaries, because at the end of the day, we want our militaries to be able to talk, de-escalate, and contribute to a climate where everybody feels safe and not vulnerable. It's also one necessary step is to contribute to the development of capabilities of our partners. It's not only about developing our own capabilities, it's about making sure that everyone who needs to develop capabilities has an opportunity. And this needs a lot of cooperation. We support in Sri Lanka a regional maritime studies center where everybody can come and be a student of the maritime issues, but also every country can provide the trainers. Because, it's one thing to say we need to defend the law of the sea, it's another thing to make sure that everybody knows what exactly is enshrined in the law of the sea and all the treaties that allow us to manage not only territorial waters and economic exclusive zones, but also the high sea. And I know Korea is strongly engaged for the BBNG treaty, which is, when everywhere around international law is challenged, but somehow we still manage to create some international law on this very, very vulnerable area that are the high seas. So I think this positive agenda, let's not forget it. Every time we have a crisis and every time we feel depressed and about the world, let's remember that when we get together, we still manage to have impact and to develop our common goods. I think it's also very important to actively contribute to maritime security and safety, and there again in a collective manner. The European Union has a program in Asia about global port safety, and Korea is also part of it. I think looking at everything we need, ports are very important infrastructure. So we can look at them as choke points or tension points, but we can also look at them at vectors of transformation, of integrating environmental consideration into industrial consideration and into defense capability development. So my colleague also mentioned about the Hormuz Strait, the French and UK initiative. That's also something, it's open, everybody can contribute, everybody can join, and I think that's a huge difference when we are inclusive and transparent and ready to welcome every level of effort that a given country is ready to contribute at one given moment, because we are not all available and equal and ready to engage. We all have our national, domestic, political cycles. We all have our financial constraints. But such an initiative, it's important because everybody can bring something to it, and I think that's a positive way forward. I would also mention the resilience in the cyber and digital area, because digital interdependence, it's something by nature. The cyberspace is not something that can be fragmented. It's already something that is totally integrated, and it's not a matter of just looking at what's happening there. We have to be able to act, and there, if we try alone, no chance to succeed. But we need, and I know Korea is very engaged in this area, we need a regulated cyberspace. We don't want to be undermined by information manipulation. We don't want to be overwhelmed by scam centers, and that's a very important issue in many Asian countries. So how to stay ahead of the risk is just to get together and work on it. And again, everybody has something to bring to the table with legal tradition, instruments, experienced instruments in the field. And I would add a last point, which is not high spectrum security, but it's permanently there. Energy transition and decarbonation, it's also an indispensable path towards autonomy and strategic autonomy. Is once we achieve decarbonation of our industries and our economies, I think we have some room for maneuver for everything else, and I think that's something that we should not relegate to the sidelines of the discussion because we have more pressing issues. We should keep working on it for the common good of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador PURCARESCU. You mentioned many things. Our cooperation should be mutually beneficial, and the maritime security, port security, and then cyber resilience in cyber and digital area, and energy transition, many things. So, due to constraint of our time, and let me turn to Ambassador LaFortune. I have a question to you. Prime Minister Carney has recently highlighted in Davos, as you mentioned, the need for stronger cooperation among middle powers in response to growing geopolitical uncertainty. He has also advocated a variable geometry, as you rightly mentioned again, that approach to international cooperation, emphasizing flexible and issue-based partnership. How can this approach help middle powers navigate today's geopolitical and geoeconomic challenges? The next question, what specific measures or plans Canada envision for advancing this vision, particularly between Europe and the Indo-Pacific? If you have time, how compatible is the vision of variable geometry with Canada's long-standing alliance partnership with the US? Please.
Thank you very much. I'll try to go fast on those questions in light of time. I think we made a lot, we cover a lot of the normative argument for variable geometry. So I just want to go with concrete example then for now. And you will not have a moment where Canada is going to go forward with a specific initiative and say, voila, here's variable geometry for all of you. We're already doing it. We already have specific initiative that is going into that logic, into that direction. That's what I would like to cover very quickly. First, and it's issue-based. So first, Canada, a lot of Indo-Pacific nation, and the European nation are all at the same time massively expanding their defense budget. All of them needs their defense industry to contribute to that effort in terms of moving forward. The danger and the issue at play is as we are all doing it at the same time, defense inflation will kick in, and even though we're investing way more money, way more financial input, we may not get way more output, way more military capabilities. Solution, we need our small, medium enterprise to fully contribute to that defense industrial effort. But the problem is, those small, medium enterprise does not have the financial backup, the financial strength to participate into high-risk defense procurement processes. So Canada and a couple of other countries is currently working on an initiative called the Defense and Security Resilience Bank. This is a bank that will gather capital, AAA level capital, that would be used to mitigate the financial risk of the defense industry by providing capital and assurances to commercial banks to enable small, medium enterprise of those member states to be part of those big procurement projects or those big defense industry projects. And we're approaching middle power to participate into such initiative from the Indo-Pacific region, from European country, and obviously Canada in North America itself. And so that will achieve two goals. First, combat defense inflation. Second, creating job in all of those countries for small, medium enterprise to participate in that defense industry, and ensure that countries like Canada, who have focused on welfare state for so many years, demonstrate to its citizens that they can be part of that expansion of the defense budget. So that's example number one of how variable geometry can be put into concrete action. The second issue I would put to your attention is obviously one that is covered already ad nauseam, but it's about critical mineral. But we often stop at saying just critical mineral, and there's actually a lot of sub-issue related to critical mineral itself. The number one, the one that is covered the most, is about the requirement of a floor when it comes to the price of critical mineral. So if one country is dominating the critical mineral and decided to sell it under that price, it will not be commercially viable for other country that does have critical mineral. Canada has, well, almost all of them, to exploit them, not making them commercially valuable. But it's not the only issue itself. So we're going to be looking at variable geometry to partner with like-minded, reliable, and trustworthy partner, not only for a floor price, but looking at how we can operate the exploitation of critical mineral in various locations, Canada for our case, but how government can work together also for stockpiling critical mineral, which from a commercial standpoint might not be viable, but is required in the 21st century itself. So you could see how variable geometry can apply really there by a couple of countries grouping together joint investment, exploiting critical mineral, and working into stockpiling. And not only it will create that situation, but this is what we mean by ensuring resiliency in that very context to ensure that we have the right stockpile, and should one country decide to weaponize the supply chains of critical mineral, while countries like Canada, Korea, and those who work with us will be protected about that. And in a very small group and joint group to do so as well. I have other example, but I'll stop there right now as I don't want to steal too much time to my friend and colleague, Ambassador CROOKS.
So, about the long-standing relation, alliance partner with the U.S.
Yes, I will address this one. So it is actually compatible with our relation with the United States itself. United States had been very clear for many years with Canada about the view of a better burden sharing, yes, in the NATO context, but also in terms of continental defense itself. And the United States also recognized that as Canada has entered the path of diversification, as it's entering with partnership beyond its traditional one with the United States, it will actually make a stronger North America continent. We can talk about energy, and I don't want to bore the crowd about movement of pipeline in North America, but basically there is vulnerabilities right now when you look at the flow of pipeline for natural gas and crude oil in North America when it comes to access to the West Coast, whether it's in the United States or it's in Canada itself. So Canada that would work with Indo-Pacific nation to ensure that natural gas, crude oil, helium, for example, make its way to the Indo-Pacific. It would also diversify the supply chain that should something go wrong within North America, both United States and Canada will have options to mitigate the situation and create and divert the supply chain in a way that would respond to any crisis for the continent of North America. So none against actually reinforcing the partnership between the two countries.
Thank you, Ambassador LaFortune, for sharing your thoughts. It was very useful. Finally, Ambassador CROOKS, let me turn to you. The UK has been expanding its cooperation with key Indo-Pacific partners, including Japan, Australia, and the Republic of Korea, and increasingly appears to view the security of Europe and Indo-Pacific as closely interconnected. Recently, as you mentioned earlier in the article for The Economist, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper pointed out that the middle powers should tread skillfully around the biggest blocs. In particular, she highlighted the potential for cooperation among the UK, Japan, Australia, Canada, and Korea in addressing pressing geo-economic challenges. Could you elaborate on the ideas and the strategic rationale driving it? And looking ahead, do you expect domestic political changes in the UK or Europe to affect this approach? Or do you see engagement with the Indo-Pacific as a long-term strategic priority? Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Vice Minister, especially for raising domestic political change. I'm always very happy to talk about domestic politics. But before I get to that, I would say that the rationale for this approach, which our Foreign Secretary set out in her article, I think the key to it all is the growing importance of geoeconomics and economic security as a factor in international relations. I was reflecting just now, I first worked in our embassy in Seoul 30 years ago. I was the second Secretary Economic, and I was thinking how many people in the embassy are now doing the job that I used to do. And it's now done by about 20 people. And it's not because I was really, really good at what I did, though I was okay. But I've got teams working on trade policy, on economic policy, on critical minerals and supply chains, on energy security, on climate, environment, nature, technology policy, digital policy. All of these areas become much, much more important and significant in international relations. That's one reason. Second reason is Korea has become a key player in so many of these areas as well. Korea is the world's leading producer of memory chips for AI. We can see that the effects of that on the stock market here every day. Korea's growth as a defense industrial partner, Korea's growth as an energy provider, not just in oil refinery, but also in nuclear and increasingly renewables as well. But I think also a reason why economic security is becoming so important to us in Europe, I would say, is the fact that if we are to defend our democracies and to guard against populism and authoritarianism throughout the continent, we have to be able to demonstrate that governments can generate growth and jobs and investment. And diplomacy and international connection plays a huge role in this. I think these are some of the reasons why, when we look at the international scene, we think we need new elements in our toolkit, a variable geometry, as Philippe has put it. So alongside the UN and the G7 and the G20 and NATO and all of these other things, we need to look for other things. I hadn't actually realized until this morning, listening to Secretary General Ban, that ASEM was no longer a thing. I think the reason ASEM is no longer a thing is that the commonality of interests and values ceased to exist with some of the players in ASEM. And so we have a quest, I think, for new groupings, and the Foreign Secretary's proposal for a geopolitical contact group is one example. The UK-French initiative in the Straits of Hormuz, perhaps another very different example of an ad hoc coalition to address a specific set of problems. Initiatives we have in to support Ukraine as well as all of the work that we do in our bilateral relationships. We're all here trying to boost our relations with Korea, with all the countries that we're accredited to. Diplomats need to work harder, I think, is part of the rationale. Domestic political change, I would say, well, I'm in my 5th year as British ambassador in Korea. I'm about to serve my 5th British Prime Minister in that time. But actually, while domestic policies may shift, our foreign policy and our security policy has remained remarkably, well, perhaps not remarkably, but very, very strongly consistent in our support for the interests and values, our support for Ukraine, utterly unflinching, but also our economic engagement and our political engagement, our security engagement with the Indo-Pacific, as I said in my remarks. I think that is not just enduring, that is permanent, and it's because of the importance of this region to all of these different economic factors that I outlined. So yeah, Indo-Pacific, Euro-Atlantic cooperation, definitely here to stay.
Thank you, Ambassador CROOKS, for your thoughts and very useful comments. Thank you very much to all our panelists for sharing your valuable perspective and thoughts. We are running short on time. I will now open the floor to questions for questions to the audience. Please feel free to raise your hand if you have any question, and please introduce yourself before asking questions. And please keep a question as brief as possible. The man in the second row, please. Yes.
First of all, my name is Charlemagne, NTD News, United States, and I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to your insightful presentation on inter-regional cooperation for peace and security amidst geopolitical uncertainties. Elsewhere in the world, unexpected confrontation happen here and there, like Iranian war and Ukraine war. Furthermore, the superpowers, conflict, especially between the United States and China, will cause another serious problem. And cybersecurity issues and climate change security issues, all the way, they have a lot of troubles. I mean, geopolitical uncertainties are really serious problem to be undertaken to create peace and prosperity for this world. So, as I know, a lot of people participate in this, forum, Jeju Forum, and they are global leaders. Do you have any intention to declare joint statement urging United States or China to get together to solve this kind of invisible conflict? And that'll be first question. And second question might be North Korean issues, denuclearization process of the Korean Peninsula. These days, North Korea has deployed its military, power around the DMZ, 100 meter, maybe 80 meters distance, which should be, 2 kilometers away, which means very serious provocative actions. In this viewpoint, United States, Japan, and Korea should get together while China and Russia support North Korea. This might be another threat. Korean Peninsula risk will be another geopolitical uncertainties. How can we handle through this global community assistance? Thank you.
Are you asking this question to one of the panelists? Yeah. Ambassador CROOKS, you have...
Well, thank you. Let me just say, I can't speak for the Jeju Forum. I doubt there's a joint statement in preparation. Nope, didn't think so. I do think, though, that I wouldn't agree that it's just for two countries to take responsibility for the global order. I think it is a responsibility that is shared by all of us as globally capable powers, and I think that's what you know. This panel really is discussing how we can all collectively and individually take that responsibility. On North Korea, I agree it's a worrying situation. Some of you may know I served as British ambassador in North Korea before I was here. I know something of the situation on the peninsula. I would say that our position, I suspect is true of many of us, is to support the interests and the values of those who are most affected. So our friends here in the Republic of Korea, we think that any approach to the Korean Peninsula security needs to encompass a combination of pressure, and the UK as a UN Security Council member has been steadfast in implementing and upholding sanctions. It has to involve deterrence, and the UK as a member of the UN Command has consistently been part of structures that seek to preserve security on the peninsula as well. But also must involve dialogue, and as a country that has long sustained diplomatic relations with the DPRK, we're also ready to play our part there as well.
Thank you, Ambassador CROOKS. Because the second question, we have another session for tomorrow. So I think you could ask a similar question to that session. As we are running out of time, I will have the madam in the front row. You.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank all the panelists, and of course the moderator, and I learned a lot through your conversation. But my question is very simple, and I was going to ask Mr. Ambassador, Mr. CROOKS, because I'm from Andong, and where Her Majesty visited, Queen Elizabeth visited about 26 years ago. So people in Andong are very much interested in what's going on in Great Britain. And they ask me a question like, why do they change prime minister so often? So I don't want to answer the question without talking to you, Mr. Ambassador. He happened to be a very, very good friend of mine. Thank you.
I get all the fun questions. Thank you, Ambassador Do. We go back a very, very long way, 27 years, in fact. I would simply say that in the UK, our democracy is extraordinarily sensitive to shifts in public opinion. And our system is such that the Prime Minister is the politician who commands the majority in Parliament. Once that majority shifts, power can shift as well. And that can be a healthy thing as well. I'm not going to get into any comparisons with other countries at this point, but I think we should take that as a sign of the health and the vigour of UK representative democracy.
We have, Ambassador Lee, Special Representative of Middle East. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Kyung-chul. I cover Middle East and Afghanistan. Thank you very much for all your presentations and the insights. And my question goes to Turkish Deputy Foreign Minister. As Ambassador Jeong mentioned earlier in the discussions, what you said contained a number of encouraging elements. But what came to me most seriously is when you said the use of force is these days first resort rather than the last resort. That's a serious matter because the non-use of force in principle is the very basis of the system we have since 1945. And we all know that it is in danger, but personally I still believe that maybe perhaps one day we will find again the usefulness or centrality, if you like, of such a system, simply because there's no viable alternative to that in the foreseeable future. And are you optimistic that one day we will again embrace such a system, or do you think that we've already gone too far, not being able to be back in such days? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm always optimistic as a diplomat. I think I'm paid to be optimistic as well in a way. But the thing is that it's very much in our own hands, because I think this instinct to use force to achieve political objectives is a fact. But I think it should be, us to, change this instinct. And the way we are trying to do it in Turkey, as Turkey, is we very much invest in conflict prevention and mediation ourselves. And we try to do it by speaking to every part of any conflict and trying to find the common ground between those parties and try to facilitate a meaningful dialogue among those parties rather than prolongation or the launch of any sort of kinetic warfare for that matter. But even beyond that, I think these are more sort of, specific attempts on our part for specific conflicts. But we are also trying to create a system, at least in the Middle East for now, where the countries of the region will not have any sort of appetite to use force against each other. And we are trying to do this by, developing and by forging regional ownership in this part of the world, which was lacking for a long period of time. Unfortunately, in the Middle East, on most occasions, we looked for external parties to provide solutions to our own problems. And unfortunately, that didn't, bring anything good for many decades for now. So now, as Turkey, we have started a quadrilateral sort of a cooperation mechanism between Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. But that's a core group, in a way, to provide a platform for other countries interested in coming and forging a true regional ownership for the problems and opportunities of that particular region itself. I call it as the Helsinki moment of the Middle East, when back in 1970s, at the peak of the Cold War, the two blocs came together and agreed on certain basic principles of international system, like non-use of force, like non-violation of borders, or come up with certain confidence-building measures in terms of transparency and in terms of providing some predictability as to what each other will be doing in certain conditions and such. So this is the kind of platform that we are trying to build in our region. Now, we see more and more countries in the region more interested in that. As I said, it's the core 4 countries doing that, but we hear more from other countries also to be a part of that. So if that, can be the case, I think in the future, I cannot give you a timeline. This is just the beginning of a very, sort of an idealistic and sort of, a very ambitious vision maybe. But one has to start from somewhere. And if we can do that, that is one of the reasons what makes me optimistic for the future of our region. And I think that can be a good example for the entire world as well. If the Middle East, which is known by its conflicts and by its volatility, if we can create a regional ownership, if we can create something that will stop the use of force and that will stop aggression, I think that might be a very good example for the rest of the world as well.
Thank you. I think now it's already 4:45. 5 minutes have passed. I think as we conclude, we need to conclude our session. As we conclude today's session, I would like to once again express my deepest gratitude to our distinguished panelists who demonstrated their exceptional professionalism as a senior diplomats, and all those participants today. I believe today's discussion has provided a valuable opportunity to deepen our shared understanding of how Europe and the Indo-Pacific can cooperate in an increasingly uncertain international environment. My sincere appreciation goes to our panelists, especially the Ambassador GÜMRÜKÇÜ, who flew all the way from Turkey, and the Ambassador, from all the way from France, for sharing your valuable insights, and to our audience for their active participation. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.